Back. It now gives me great pleasure to welcome to the summit Carolina Urmeneta. Carolina is the Circular Economy Program Director and America's regional lead with the Global Methane Hub. The hub represents the first coordinated approach to methane mitigation funding, focused on energy, agriculture, and waste sectors, which account for around 96% of human-caused methane emissions. Before joining the hub, Carolina served as head of the Climate Change Division of the Ministry of the Environment of Chile. There, she pioneered the science-based and transformative climate change framework law, which was approved unanimously by Congress and made Chile the first Latin American country to codify the goal of carbon neutrality and climate resilience. So again, for those of you joining us online, a quick reminder that you can ask questions using the Q&A tab, which you'll find to the right of your screen. And obviously, everybody here can just raise your hands and we'll bring a mic to you. Carolina, welcome. I hand over to you.
Thank you very much. Are you listening to me?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for this invitation. I think that it has been 2 wonderful days, really good conversations. So now we are going to talk about methane emissions and why we must reduce them. Of course, you have talked a lot about this thing during the previous presentation, but we want to get you like deep on methane and why we are working on this. So the first thing, there it is that we have key facts based on science about methane and about why we need to reduce methane emissions that come from human activities. Okay, 60% of the methane emissions come, in fact, from human activities. And what is really important is that methane emissions have caused 0.5 degrees of the increase of the temperature that we already have. And on a 20-year time scale, methane global warming potential is 86 times stronger than carbon dioxide. And why are we talking about this 20-year time scale? Is because methane is a short-lived climate pollutant. So this is why we need to work during this decade in the mitigation of methane emissions. Because if you go to a 100-year time scale, the global warming potential of methane is lower. It is 28 times more powerful than CO2, but in the first 20 years, it is 86 times power. And we know, of course, that the source of methane emissions are agriculture, fossil fuel operation, and waste mainly. And what is interesting is that we know the impact that the methane emissions have on health and also on the yield of agriculture and ecosystem productions. So methane emissions caused by human activities are one of the most significant drivers of climate change. And also, it is important to know that methane is one of the main precursors of tropospheric ozone, which is a powerful greenhouse gas and air pollutant. So we must work on reduction of methane. Also about the emissions, we could analyze, and we have this global methane assessment developed by the Clean and Air Coalition that put us really good information about the emissions in different regions regarding methane. And when we talk, for example, about energy, we could see here that we are talking about coal mining and oil and gas production. When we are talking about agriculture, we are talking about rice cultivation and enteric fermentation and manure treatment. And when we talk about waste, we are talking about landfills and wastewater treatment. And we could see here that we should have different approach in different regions and of course in different countries, because we need to consider the most effective way in order to reduce these emissions. So, for example, we have in Latin America uh, and in Africa, for example, and South Asia, that agriculture is really important. We have in Middle East and in North America, Russia, that oil and gas is the main source, etc. So we need to go deep on this assessment and on each country inventories in order to know what is the cost-effective measures that we should take. What is relevant and what has been the information that we have at global level is that, well, of course, we have the Global Methane Pledge, which commit all the countries to have 30% global reduction by 2030. But we also have new IPCC assessment report from this year, where science states that we need to go beyond that. We need to have 34% of reduction by 2030 and 44% of reduction by 2040. And science has says also that methane roles in preventing warming is crucial in reaching tipping points for dangerous impact on people and ecosystem. And there is why tackling methane is crucial in order to keep warming under 1.5 degrees and meet the Paris Agreement. So that is why we are putting this urgency in these methane reduction measures. We have the Global Methane Pledge at COP26, where we have over 120 countries to sign this pledge. We are now in 15 countries, which makes us really happy. And what we talk about in this Global Methane Pledge with all the countries is that we should go on measures that we know, of course, for example, in the energy sector, but we must implement out of the side box solution, for example, for food system emissions. So we need to have these both things keep in mind, because business as usual won't cut the methane emissions. And we know where are the potentials in order to reduce emissions. We have 60% of reductions relative to fossil fuel, 30 to 35% related with waste, and 20 to 25% related to agriculture. And what is important also is that this is an opportunity for countries, because methane mitigations provides opportunities for quick wins for safer climate, cleaner air, better agriculture productivity, among others. We could see here in this graph that most of the measures that we could implement regarding methane reduction has negative and low cost. And if we want to go beyond that, beyond what we have, for example, in the methane pledge, that this could have a cost which could be estimated around $50 per ton of CO2 if we want to go, for example, to 50 to 80% of reduction. So we have information, we know how to do, we need to implement this. And this is only if we consider economic evaluation. If we go to co-benefits, well, we know these are significant, and the methane reduction could help us in order to prevent death, in order to prevent disease as asthma, and also in order to prevent, for example, crop losses. So this is really important. And this put us to think also in environmental justice, because when we see methane emissions and what happened in the territories, you could see how to work with territories and communities. And for example, we have a really good example that Carbon Mapper, which is measure methane emissions by satellite technology with NESA technology. They developed, for example, this case study at Sunshine Canyon in Los Angeles, which is a landfill. And when you address the leaking methane in landfill, we have a direct contribution to environmental justice. Here we could see how odor complaints decrease when they develop measures in order to leak methane. And this, you could see also how in these pictures, how the methane emission decrease when they develop this action, and how this was well received by the communities. So we have this, and we want to go and to develop more things like this. So what is the Global Methane Hub, and what do we do? Global Methane Hub is a $300 million philanthropic effort in order to align funding on methane mitigation. We support Global Methane Pledge signatories and potential signatories in meeting the pledge and go beyond, because as we said, science asks us to go beyond the pledge. We are focused on oil and gas, agriculture, and waste sector, and we drive coordination and collaboration on methane advocacy. And for that, we granting areas with the highest impact in order to cut methane emission across the different sectors. We are based on Chile, in Santiago, specifically at Valparaiso Catholic University. And we have three main areas, which is energy. The program director of energy is based in Denmark. We have agriculture, and the program director is based on Uruguay. And we have circular economy and waste, which is, I am the program director, and I'm based in Chile, also with most of the people of the hub, but we are not all based in Chile. What do we do when we are talking about collaboration and coordination for methane reduction ambition? Well, we help national governments and local governments in order to update policies, regulation, and laws. And for that, we make studies, analysis, inventories, projections, and capacity building to have more ambitious policies. And we want to have, for example, more laws and regulation in order directly to reduce emission. And for that, for example, we develop studies in order to make cost-effective analysis for countries in order to them have action plans or pledges regarding methane reduction. We work really close with the Climate and Clean Air Coalition. We have a grant with them, and they are working in 30 countries, for example, with this objective. So this is some of the work that we are doing. We are a pretty new organization. We established at the beginning of this year. So this is what we are doing and what we want to do. We work also in catalytic implementation and finance leverage. Here I put an example of what we want to do and we want to replicate. For example, in Chile, we have a really good experience with Reciclo Orgánicos program, which is a program in order to avoid waste, organic waste go into the landfills and do, for example, composting, and then use this compost in order to improve soil quality. We have really good results with this program here in Chile with the help of the Canada government, and we want to replicate this in other countries and go beyond that we have here in Chile. This is just an example. And for that, we develop pre-feasibility studies, finance analysis, and we work together also with multi-development bank collaborations. We work also and improve monitoring, report, and verification. And for example, the last week at the Summit of the America, we have a side event with the special climate envoy John Kerry. We have the participation of around 10 ministers from different countries at Latin America, and we have a really great announcement from the Governor Newsom from California in order to commit 100 million on the methane accountability program, which is something really relevant because we must consider that we need to have transparent accountability and monitoring regarding the methane reduction, and in order to also use this information for this new biennial update transparency report that countries must present to the UNFCCC convention. So this is some things that we do. And just a quick update on funding that we have done. We have already approved $10 million on energy sector in North America and Europe. $10 million in 3 years support countries in methane reduction. This is what we are working with CCAC. $3 million in energy sector for Europe transition, $2 million to work in Australia and in Latin America. And we are working also in a grant of around $20 million for Asia. And what we will do during this year, this second semester, is to focus on landfill, agriculture, and oil and gas. And if we talk directly about biogas, what do we have is what you, of course, know is that we need to look for crop results, animal manure, organic waste, and wastewater sludge. And what is our approach to this is specifically regarding organic, is that we need to work on organic waste prevention, which is a powerful tool for reducing methane emission. And that is why this trunk pyramid is our what we want to do. But we know, of course, that we are going to have anaerobic digestion because it's a solution that we need and that is implemented in a lot of countries. So how we work on that? Well, we consider that there are facts that must be considered in order to increase the implementation of this technology, and that is biogas from agricultural waste can cost effectively mitigate methane emissions. It allows farms to generate additional revenue streams and provide opportunities for development and investment in rural areas. Biogas is a useful renewable energy with applications in electricity generations, in cooking and alternative fuel vehicles maybe. And the state can be used as soil improver, thus reducing requirement for alternative products. So we consider that this is a good solution. It's a good technology that is already proved. And when we look about benefits of biogas and biomethane, we know that biogas plants can operate in a flexible manner if we compare, for example, with wind and solar technology. We have a certain industry that produce wet waste with high organic content that is a suitable feedstock for anaerobic digestion. Biogas production can also have the co-benefit of providing treatment for waste while also supplying on-site heat and electricity. And we know also that we have production of biomethane worldwide, and this is majority done in Europe and North America. So we want to go to the other regions. And we think which is important also to consider, and you talked about this yesterday, is that traditional cook stoves typically are fueled by wood or coal through inefficient an incomplete dirty combustion process, making a lot of emissions. And we have China leading the world in biogas digester installation for cooking. And for example, we think this is a really cost-effective alternative in regions such as Africa, and we should consider this. And why we should consider this? Because we know that biogas cook stoves have positive environmental performance, match only with solar, cooking, as we could see here in this graph. And this is really good, considering the reduction of emissions that could be compared with petroleum gas and also ethanol. So we think this is another good example, and we want to contribute in order to increase the implementation of these solutions. So just to end my presentation, we know what works. This is what we think. We know also how it works. We know we must act, and we know the time is now. So you can count with Global Methane Hub in order to make this happen. And if you have any questions or comments, I'm happy to answer or to talk about this. Many thanks.
That was an excellent overview of why methane is such a problem, and all the things we need to do with it, and particularly, obviously, we're here very focused on the benefits of recycling the organic waste that can go through biogas and the actions we can take. Just before I ask you a question, do we have any questions from our audience here? Online? Not yet. I mean, I think, Carolina, yesterday, I mean, obviously you and I, we have both spoken to talk about how we can potentially collaborate, and at the summit and expo here, we've been talking to lots of our members about, the ways in which the actions we as an association can take to effectively speed up the rollout of biogas plants, because as you've highlighted, 2030 is really not very far away. It's 7.5 years, and that means there's an awful lot to do. And so looking at ways in which we can speed that up, whether that's through developing standards, developing training programs, because of course we're going to need a lot more people coming into the industry, and of course the support we can give to governments to put in place action plans that will put the policies in place that will create that enabling environment is really important. And yesterday we had a presentation from the California Public Utilities Commission talking about the plans they're putting in place, and the CCAC. So there's a lot for us to do and to coordinate. So how do you see, where do you see the coordination happening most effectively? Do you see it at the level of the Methane Hub? Do you see it at the CCAC Secretariat? How do you see that coordination process working most effectively?
I think, and this is really good, because I think we could all help. We are working together with CCAC. We are part of the waste hub that CCAC have, and they are working on this. And we are working with them, and they are working with us. We have granted CCAC in order to go with this speed up process. The approach, I think it's really common, and we have the same approach on this. And what is good, I think, is that CCAC works like in a formal way, considering UN requirements and everything with countries, and we are totally in with that. That is why we give them a huge grant. But what is also interesting, for example, is that we are a philanthropic effort, and that gives us more freedom in order to do some different things. For example, CCAC grant could not help ODA countries. We could help them, okay? So that is some things that we could do. We could work with INGOs, with different partners in order to complement what CCAC is doing with governments and to have this really speed up process. I think that is how we see our collaboration, and that is why when I present what do we do, we want to be a collaboration organization. We want to be coordinated with different institutions. We know that it is never enough. So I think it is better to have a lot of initiatives working together in order to go to this methane reduction and to increase the momentum that we have at COP26, because we need to keep this and we want to increase this commitment. So that is my answer to your question.
Excellent. Carolina, thank you very much. We've reached the end of the time. I will just end by saying that we look forward to continuing our collaboration and developing that, and collectively doing the best that we can to meet the Global Methane Pledge. Carolina, thank you very much indeed for joining us. A 5-minute gap before Chris Huhn will return to chair the next session. So enjoy the few minutes.